Hey, so for today, what we are talking about is mindfulness. Not to be confused with meditation, that's a totally different thing and a video for another time. But today, I want to talk to you really quickly about what mindfulness really is and how simple it really is to think about, because it's one thing in our life that can help slow us down, and I think that is a very good, helpful thing for a whole host of reasons. All right, so mindfulness. This is a thing that you have heard of lots of times, I'm sure. You've probably seen lots of pins on Pinterest about it or posts on Instagram about it. It's not a new thing or a new concept, but it is a thing that is very under practiced. And I say practiced because I think it is something that we have to work at and that we do have to be aware of and put some effort into, but I don't mean practiced in the sense of how you practice meditation. That would be something totally different. Mindfulness is something that we can do really easily and without very much effort once we start to get the hang of it. And it's also not a thing that you need to do as a routine necessarily. It's something that you can do in the middle of the day at a moment's notice if you think about it. So I want to talk about a little bit more of what mindfulness is and why is it beneficial to do that at all. So very simply stated, mindfulness is being present. It just means that we are not going too far into the future thinking through things or being stuck in the past thinking about things. We're just present. And it can be really hard to do that, right? I think it might just be a little bit of our human nature to be worried about future things or to be kind of hung up and stuck on things of the past. It can be really hard for us to be very present. And that's what mindfulness is to simply be present in where you're at right now. It can also be broken down into being present with your body, and so increasing your awareness of what's going on with your body. I'll talk more about that in just a minute, but it's an understanding of how to slow your body down to be able to be in the present moment, to be mindful of what's going on with you, with your life, all that sort of thing. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is not because I'm encouraging us to have daily mindful practices, like I said, like that would be maybe closer to the meditation side. If you can do mindfulness daily, that is awesome. Good for you. I absolutely do not. I think it is a good thing. I'm just being real with you that that's something I forget daily, but I do have moments where I try to slow down and soak it in and just be present. And life is so much better that way. I think it helps us enjoy the things around us more, our surroundings or the people around us or the life around us. And honestly, I think one of the best things that it might do is help us be more comfortable and okay with just us, you know? That's something that probably most people could benefit from, and mindfulness is maybe not the first thing you'd think of to do that, but I really think it has that positive side effect if you give it that time. Something else that I think is important to note with mindfulness is it's not just about slowing your thoughts down and taking 5 minutes of Zen, right? That's one way you could go about it, and that's definitely not a bad thing, but you've probably heard some other terms where mindfulness is combined, and they're really wise advice or wise approaches, which would be things like mindful eating or mindful communication, mindful listening, things like that, that there's a difference when we do those things mindfully, if that's a word. Can I say it that way? I don't know. When we go about some of those things with a mindfulness approach, then chances are we do them a little bit differently. So the easy example would be mindful eating, right? So this is not to talk about any certain type of diet or anything like that, but let's throw the diet part out and say you're having a burger and fries and a milkshake, right? That sounds delicious. If you're having that and you are trying to go about mindful eating, you would eat that slowly and like take time between your bites and chew thoroughly and all those things. And as soon as you start to recognize what's going on in your body, we have a hormone that signals our brain, okay, I'm full. And a lot of times we overeat because we don't recognize that hormone. That is totally linked to mindfulness if you think about it, because we are not being present and we're not being aware of what's going on in our body if we're eating past the point of being full. So mindfulness in eating doesn't have to just be what you're eating. That's also good, wise advice to be mindful about what you eat. But you can practice mindful eating just by being present at the time that you're eating and recognizing when your body's full and things like that. So there's so much more to mindfulness than, like I said, just sitting in your day in your daily zen, right? Another one that I think is super important and often overlooked is, how do we be mindful in our relationships, right? Because we are relational beings. We are created and made to have relationship and connection with people. And we're all wired that way, introvert and extrovert. But sometimes we forget to be mindful in our relationships. We forget to slow down and soak in what's going on with the other person or our family member or our friend or our kids. We forget to soak in what's coming from them. And by soak in, I mean that slow down to be present and realize what's going on with them. We forget to do that in our relationships of all kinds, and we don't practice mindfulness in that. And our relationships can really suffer from it sometimes, right? If we can be more mindful in our relationships, we slow down and we start to pick up cues that we previously were ignoring or dismissing or completely unaware of, right? If we can slow down and practice that mindfulness in this moment, what is going on with my spouse? In this very moment, what am I reading off of them? In this very moment, what is going on with my child? What am I reading off of them? In this very moment, what am I reading off of my coworker or whoever it is? If we can slow down, and this is a really hard practice, right? Because like I said at the beginning, if we're kind of stuck in the present, if we're kind of stuck in the past or thinking too much towards the future, we get wound up with those things, right? Like, let's say a spouse is a good example of, in the past, maybe there's been certain fights over particular topics. And so if that topic comes up again, there's lots of intensity and emotion and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot to work through there, but we get stuck in our past experience with it and in our past thoughts about it and our past feelings of it. And we are really struggling to be able to be in that present conversation rather than all the ones that we've had in the past. I totally get that, right? That's human nature. It's so hard not to do that. But we do ourselves and our spouse and our relationship a huge disservice when we are stuck back there and not just being here right now in this conversation, right? It's so hard to do, and I know that, but that's the point of these videos and all of that, is to help us learn to challenge that, right? A lot of this stuff is like an underworked muscle. If you haven't exercised in 3 years and then you go do a workout, it is going to be rough, right? It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. You're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel so out of shape. You're going to likely feel sore the next day. It takes time and it takes a lot to stretch that muscle. It takes a lot to work that muscle. All of this stuff is very similar. It takes time and it takes work, but the end result is so worth it. Okay, let me give you this really quick example. I was attending a conference and there was this awesome old guy, like, I don't know how old. I swear he was for sure in his 70s would be my guess. And he was just so spunky and fun. He was actually an engineer by trade, but had done kind of on the side all sorts of research and practice in mindfulness because it's something that he truly believed in and believed in the power of and practiced and all that. So he led our little group through a mindfulness exercise. And so I'm going to share with you what happened with me because it was so cool. So I'm just sitting in this big conference room, right? It's nothing special. We're not on the floor with like fancy music or like drums or anything. But we're sitting there and he asked us to just kind of get comfortable, feet on the floor, close your eyes, whatnot. So we're following through this and he's kind of walking us through in his own language. It wasn't a scripted thing, but walking us through a mindfulness practice. And at one point he said, I want you to pay attention to the left side of your body. So I'm sitting there and I literally started to feel myself go towards my left, right? I almost felt heavy on that side. It was kind of weird. And then in my mind, you're supposed to be mindful, right? So I was like supposed to not be thinking too much, but it's really hard. And so I was thinking, okay, tell me to go to the right, like I want to balance out here. He never said to go to the right. The next thing that he said was, okay, now I want you to think of a loved one. And so I thought of my loved one. And next thing I know, I felt balanced again. And it was the most bizarre thing. I was aware of the fact that I felt balanced, but it didn't make sense because he never told me to go right. So I was so curious, like, what just happened? So thankfully he explained it without me asking. At the end of our exercise, he asked for feedback from people, and lots of people had some really interesting, cool things that they shared. And he explained that when he told us to pay attention to our left side, that is tapping into our left brain, which is the side of our brain that is more physical, mathematical, logical, that kind of thing. So it made sense that I kind of felt tippy that way, right? I was just paying really close attention to that side. Then when he said to think of a loved one, without me realizing it at the time, he was telling me to tap into my right brain, which is relationship, emotion, connection, all of that kind of stuff. And that's what balanced me out, right? So it was such a cool experience, something that I will never forget. It was not hypnosis. It wasn't anything like that. It was literally just being mindful in that moment. And I was aware of what was going on inside of my body and my brain and all that. And it was so powerful. And I'll never forget that. So I'm sharing that with you guys because not that you are going to sit through a mindfulness practice necessarily, but even on your own time, I think if you can sit there and just slow down and be aware of your breath, be aware of the smells around you, be aware of the just the environment around you, all that kind of stuff, it can do a lot for you, right? It can really make an impact on our body, mind, and soul. And that is a good thing, right? Especially if we can learn to do it more often. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a daily ritual, but try to be aware of it more often and in these other ways of relationships and all that kind of stuff. All right, as a final note, what I want you guys to think about is what is constant amongst your chaos, right? At the time that this video is being recorded, there is some chaos in the world, and it's unsettling for lots of people, but I think it's important to remember what is constant around us. It is easy just on a small scale to wake up daily and see some chaos in front of us and around us, whether that be with work, spouse, kids, schedules, all of that. Chaos is easy to find, right? But I want you to think about what is constant amongst the chaos. It's kind of like that analogy of like you're in the waves of something, right? But you can still see that lighthouse. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but it kind of proves the point. Or maybe it's, I think the other way they say it is you still see the shore, right? It is a little bit cheesy, but there's so much power and truth in it, because when we can focus on the constant good of what's going on around us and take a minute to be mindful of that, take a minute to be present really with that, then that chaos doesn't seem so overwhelming. It doesn't seem like that chaos has so much power over us. So mindfulness is a really easy, quick tip to helping you slow down, helping you be more aware of you and your relationships and the things going on around you. And honestly, I think too, it can give you a little bit more of a sense of control, right? you have the control to take a minute to slow down and take a minute to breathe and take a minute to just kind of let some of that stuff go from past or future anxieties. Just be present. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, leave them below. Hit the buttons and share with a friend.